Hello, I'm Pete Torriello.
And I'm Maureen Torriello.
And it's time again for the Sonic Boomers Podcast.
Before the interstate highway system, before famed Route 66, before highways were even numbered, there was one road that captured the public's attention. One road that led to new horizons. One road that changed America forever. Beginning in Times Square, New York City, and ending in San Francisco, it was America's first coast-to-coast automobile road. The Lincoln Highway.
This is program number 83, and we are talking exactly about that. The Lincoln Highway, the road, Lincoln Highway, the book, and we have to give credit to Wyoming PBS, Wyoming Public Broadcasting. That is a piece of sound that we pulled from a documentary that they did a few years ago, 100 Years of the Lincoln Highway. And we highly recommend that you watch it. And boy, every night I go to bed and I wake up praying that I sound like the narrator that you heard there.
Well, I think you sound pretty close.
Bob Sauer is his name. He's a voice actor, and he does a lot of narration and audio books, and he's just fabulous. We'll hear him again at the end of the show, too.
That's good.
So why are we doing a show about Lincoln Highway?
Well, first of all, I started off by reading the book, The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. It's a New York Times bestseller. I don't know if it's
move it into the camera so our viewers can see it.
Ta-da!
It's a big book.
It's a big book, but it goes quickly. And I was interested in it because of the fact that I like to read books that have local places in it that are familiar to me. And the Lincoln Highway does go through New Jersey. So I thought, I'll pick up this book. The Lincoln Highway itself is only kind of like the background in this novel.
It's not a book about the Lincoln Highway or the construction of the Lincoln Highway.
It plays a part in it because the people in the book travel it.
Right.
And basically the story is in June 1954, there's an 18-year-old Emmett Watson. He's driven home to Nebraska by the warden because he had just served time at a juvenile work camp where he was 15 months for involuntary manslaughter. What happened was he was being bullied. He got into an altercation with a kid at a fair. Punched the kid's lights out. The kid fell down, hit his head on a cinder block, and ended up dying. Yeah. It was not his intent to, kill, or he was not a dangerous criminal by any means. But anyway, his mother's long gone. His father was recently deceased. The farm he grew up on is being repossessed, foreclosed on by the bank. And all Emmett was deciding to do was he was going to go home, pick up his 8-year-old brother, and head out to California on the Lincoln Highway to start a new life. What happens is when he gets home and the warden leaves, turns out there were 2 stowaways in the warden's car. 2 of his friends from this work camp were stowing away, and they had different ideas. And let's just say they didn't go to California. They went in the opposite direction. They went out to New York. And the book chronicles their journey from all different characters' points of view. It takes place only over 10 days. And it's fascinating. There's a lot of history in there. And it's pretty true to life as far as what was going on politically and historically at that time. And it's a good read. But if you're thinking it's going to be about the Lincoln Highway, it is not.
Yeah. It just takes place as they're traveling along the Lincoln Highway.
Exactly.
So what is the deal with the Lincoln Highway itself? Well, a lot of people, I think, don't know what it is, or they confuse it with Route 66, which, by the way, I do have my...
Look at that. Did you do that on purpose?
Yes, I did. Everything I do on camera is on purpose. You know that. This is my Route 66 mug. And a lot of people confuse the Lincoln Highway with Route 66, but Lincoln Highway came long before Route 66. And the Lincoln Highway, which goes back to 1913, was the first transcontinental road in the United States, running from New York to San Francisco. And it was the brainchild of a business executive named Carl Fisher. Carl Fisher was the head of Presto Light, which was a company. Now remember that we're talking 1912, 1913. There weren't a lot of cars, but the Model T was already in existence,
Exactly.
the Ford Model T. And Presto Light made headlights and spark plugs and
Car parts.
Car
and things,
parts.
yeah.
And Carl Fisher conceived a road, because there were none, that would go from the East Coast to the West Coast. And he called it the Coast to Coast Rock Highway.
Now, rock, not as in rock and roll, correct?
Correct. Correct, as in there are rocks that form the roadway.
Because at that time, most of the roads were dirt paths.
Yeah, they weren't paved. They didn't have nice concrete or
Even
asphalt,
gravel
or
or
my
anything,
dad
yeah.
used to call it macadam. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's a difference between macadam and asphalt.
I don't know.
But no, they didn't have it back then. The roads were all, they were goat trails. They were bike paths, bike trails, horse and buggy trails.
Exactly.
And so Carl Fisher decided that he was going to try and lobby the automotive community and the automotive parts supply community to raise money for his coast-to-coast coast-to-coast rock highway. And he pitched a number of industry captains. He went to Goodyear, and Goodyear put up $300,000, probably Charles Goodyear himself. They went to Packard. Packard put up $150,000. There was an executive at Packard named Henry Joy, and he put up the money for Packard. They went to Henry Ford, and Henry Ford, who probably had the first nickel he ever made, he turned it down because he said it was not the job of private industry to build the nation's highways. This should be done by the taxpayers. It should be done by the government. And in that case, he was right, I think.
Yeah, but it sure comes across as being cheap.
Came across as being cheap, but I think ultimately he had the right idea. And I think probably Henry Ford and Goodyear had the most to profit from, because Goodyear made tires.
Right.
And Henry Ford made the Model
cars,
T and
right.
later the Model A. And so they both could have profited handsomely from a successful Lincoln Highway that would encourage people to travel across the United States by car. So the route for the proposed Lincoln Highway was cobbled together from a whole bunch of different roads, right? It wasn't like, when we think of, like, let's say Route 80 now, Interstate 80, we have a highway that runs continuously from Weehawken, New Jersey at 95, all the way out to San Francisco.
Right.
And we think of that as just one continuous stretch of highway.
And when we think about them building a highway, there's a plotted course on the map, and it's paved and constructed all in one time. When the Lincoln Highway was originated, what they basically did was kind of connect the dots. They went and they looked at there were good roads, they called them, throughout the country that were at least decent. They were a step above some of the really crappy dirt paths.
Yeah.
And they
Not
said,
by much, though.
not by much, but they were, they took the best roads that they could that basically was going to get them from point A to point B, east to west coast. And they said, okay, well, let's see what we can do about connecting these existing roads and, paving the in-between parts.
Yeah, so when you think Lincoln Highway, that was the name of it, but it really was anything but a highway from what we would see today. It was maybe one lane each way, dirt, gravel, paths, lots of flood. There was no drainage. There were no culverts. Bridges were these little rickety wooden bridges that maybe you'd get a wagon over. But that was the announced path of the Lincoln Highway. It would run for about 3,300 miles from New York to San Francisco through 12 states, 4 time zones. And the route was anything but perfect. They were trying to make it as straight as they possibly could. 1919 comes, and the governing body of the Lincoln Highway was called the Lincoln Highway Association. And the two key members were Carl Fisher and Henry Joy from Packard. They were the president and vice president of the Lincoln Highway Association. And they were looking for a way to promote coast-to-coast highways across the United States, of which Lincoln Highway would be the first. But they had it in their head that we really needed a whole network of highways.
Exactly.
And Lincoln Highway would be the start. And so in order to interest the federal government in highway building in 1919, they went to the War Department.
And they say, why go to the War Department? What's that got to do with roads? But
it has everything to do with roads, because you have to be able to move material from point A to point B in the event of a national incident.
Exactly.
So the War Department comes out in 1919, coming up out of Washington, and they link up with the Lincoln Highway, and they start heading down for the 3,300 miles. And it was tough all the way, because as I said, these are dirt roads, cow paths, glorified bike paths, rickety wooden bridges that are not meant to carry the weight of a military transport vehicle. And so you would have these things getting stuck in the mud, going off the bridge collapsing underneath it, things flooding, having to have the farmers come out and pull your truck out of the mud. And it was quite a job. They had 80 military vehicles and 300 soldiers in this caravan. One of those soldiers was a young lieutenant colonel named Dwight Eisenhower.
Now, where do we know that name
who
from?
plays a very prominent part in roads as we know them today in the United States.
Exactly.
And while he was involved in this, Eisenhower is thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Right.
He saw the value of it, but clearly he's thinking, there has to be a better way to do this. So eventually, the United States in 1921 got behind what was called the Good Roads movement, which was to build better roads that were using modern engineering techniques, where you would have a crown in the roadway. The crown in the roadway is, if you look at your street, even your local street, it's curved. And the peak of it is called the crown. And the reason that you have that is that when it rains, the water travels off into the gutters.
Exactly, so it doesn't flood.
So it doesn't flood. Well, that wasn't done in the day of the Lincoln Highway. So it would flood all the time. It would become a mud hole. So this good practices, good roads concept started to incorporate better bridges, stronger bridges, drainage. And the United States finally got behind it and created the United States highway system, the U.S. route numbers that we know today. Those roads were designated by a shield with a number on it. Like here in New Jersey, we have Route 9, which is a U.S. highway. I think it goes from Maine to Florida, doesn't it, Route 9?
I don't know if it goes that far.
It's one of the highways, though, that crosses the United States from north to south. And the federal government was offering matching funds to states to build these highways. And eventually the name of Lincoln Highway was changed because the government started assigning route numbers to all these paths rather than Lincoln Highway, Joe's Highway, Steve's Highway, they had route numbers. Lincoln Highway became Route 30, US 30, for most of the run. But it also became, in some parts, Route 1, Route 530, Route 50, and Route 40. So the concept of U.S. highways is finally realized in 1926. And the Lincoln Highway Board of Directors decides that it's time for us to dissolve this Lincoln Highway Association. Mission accomplished. Okay, boys, we got it started. Take over from here. And the last thing that the Lincoln Highway Association did was they brought in the Boy Scouts to put markers up along the Lincoln Highway. These red, white, and blue, I guess they were concrete
I think they were
markers,
concrete, yeah.
of which there's damn few of them left.
But in Princeton, New Jersey, one of the original ones still is standing.
I think
You
they
can
went
see
in
it.
actually 1938. They put it in. And there's one in Metuchen right in front of the town hall, as I understand, or in front of the library.
I think that's actually a replica.
It's a
though.
replica.
I don't think it's one of the ones that the Boy Scouts put in.
But if you want to see what they look like,
Yeah.
it was like an obelisk, and it had I think it was a bronze medallion of Lincoln's head, and it had like an L on it with red, white, and blue behind it.
Yeah.
And that was the Lincoln Highway marker. So by 1939, the guys who created the Lincoln Highway, Fisher and Joy, have passed on. In 1953, we fast forward, that very same Lieutenant Colonel, Dwight Eisenhower, is now the President of the United States. And he's thinking about the Lincoln Highway and his experience. And he realized, remember, this is the Cold War now.
Right.
These are
right.
tense times in this country. He's thinking, what if there was an attack? What if the United States were attacked on its own soil? We're fighting a war here. We have got to get military vehicles across the country.
Right. And we have to find a way to evacuate people in an emergency.
So he comes up with the Eisenhower Interstate Highway System. And he was inspired when he was in Germany during World War II. He was inspired by the Autobahn, which is a series of high-speed roads. And Ike was very impressed with this and decided, let's bring this concept to the United States and let's build a network of highways where there are no intersections. These are limited access highways. There are no crossings at grade. They are built for high-speed travel. They are built for larger vehicles. And it took about 30 years to complete the interstate highway system as we now know it. Like here in New Jersey, 287 is actually I-287. Nobody calls it I-287, but that's what it is. I-80. As I said earlier, I-80 runs from 95 in Teaneck all the way to San Francisco. And so anytime you see that big, it's like a big shield, big blue shield, big numbers on it, that is an interstate highway. That is part of the brainchild of Dwight Eisenhower.
And if you look, many of the sections of the Lincoln Highway, I mean, they are in ruins, the original Lincoln Highway.
Yeah, if you're looking for it, it's like Route 66. If you're looking for the original Route 66,
Yeah.
there's a few parts of it that are still there, but
Yeah.
not many.
But when you are driving on the Lincoln Highway, there are parts of it where they bypassed the original spot because it was in such bad shape, but you can still see what the remnants of the Lincoln Highway looked like back then. Unfortunately, you cannot drive on it because it's just impassable. But there are areas, especially in the Midwest, where you could go and drive and be able to see it. There's also a section of the Lincoln Highway where it's out in the middle of nowhere with nothing around, and they call it the loneliest road in the world. I don't know if it's in the world or in the country,
Yeah.
but it was the loneliest road.
Now, if you want to see where the Lincoln Highway ran through New Jersey, there are 63 miles of Lincoln Highway that go through New Jersey.
Right.
Most of it is what we now know as Route 27. But the Lincoln Highway actually started at Times Square in New York City.
Exactly.
Well, how did they get across the river
Right.
in
that was
1913?
before the tunnels and the bridges. So what do?
Ferry.
A ferry.
See, when you're talking about a route, we often think of routes as asphalt, concrete, some kind of a roadbed. But routes actually are paths from one point to another. That becomes the route, just like you might say my route to work
Exactly.
is up to this street, and then I make a left, and that is your route. And so the numbers that we have actually refer to the routing, the path, not necessarily to the physical highway itself, because sometimes those numbers change.
Right.
Or sometimes they change what they call the alignment of the highway. The Lincoln Highway was changed a few times to make it line up better and to get the roadway into areas of civilization where they needed it. So if you look at the Lincoln Highway, it does a few loop-de-loops along the way on the modified path.
And they also have to, modify for geological features like rivers and mountains and things like that they have to accommodate.
So if you look at the Lincoln Highway in New Jersey, it would start actually on the city side at Times Square. Then you come across to Weehawken over by the Lincoln Tunnel, and you're going to pick up Pershing Road, which is in Weehawken. You go to Kennedy Boulevard, Communipaw Avenue, which is Truck 1 and 9, which is before they built the Pulaski Skyway. We had Truck 19. That will eventually take you into Lincoln Park in Newark, over to Broad Street, and then onto Route 27, continuing down to Route 206, and over to the Calhoun Street Bridge in Trenton to bring you into Pensy. That would be the path of the Lincoln Highway through New Jersey.
New Jersey.
But most of it is Route 27.
So we're looking at some of the high points of your trip. If you were to take the trip on the Lincoln Highway, any portion of it or the entire thing, and there's some interesting points to see.
Do they have the world's biggest ball of string?
No.
Do they have what do they call it? The Mystic House, where the chair is up against the wall and there's one side bigger than the other, and what do they call it? The mystery spot.
Mystery spot.
There's no mystery spot on the Lincoln Highway?
Well, there might be one of those somewhere along the line.
There's a mystery spot everywhere.
Yeah. But in New Jersey, probably the most famous thing that you'll see along the Lincoln Highway is the Thomas Edison Memorial, which is just like about a half a block off the Lincoln Highway, which is right where we shot our
Christie
promo
Street.
from.
Yeah, the promo that we did to push this show, I shot at the bottom of Christie Street, right at Route 27, Lincoln Highway, and I was trying to get the sign that actually says Lincoln Highway on it, but the sun was I was facing the wrong way, and there was no way that I was going to try and step out into the road to get the sun behind me.
We love you, listeners, but we're not that dedicated.
Yeah, would have gotten picked off real fast. But that's where we shot that from.
Yeah. So in New Jersey, there's not a whole lot that's terribly interesting about the what you're going to see along the Lincoln Highway, other than the fact that it's one of the
those of you who
highways.
Do not like New Jersey may insert snarky comment here. We'll wait.
Ta-da.
Okay.
Okay. But once you cross over into Pennsylvania, now if you look at a map of the United States, Pennsylvania is a very wide state from east to west. I mean, it could take you maybe 4 hours to get from one end to the other, maybe more. I'm not even
I think
sure.
it might even be more.
Might even be more. So there's a lot of geography there. And so they have taken advantage of some really cool things that you can see along there. One of them, in York County, Pennsylvania, is the Shoe House. S-H-O-E, not S-H-U-E. It looks like the little lady who lived in a shoe.
Okay.
And it was originally built by a shoe company.
Tom McCann. No, I don't.
I don't remember the name of it's not famous by today's standards.
Yeah.
But he built this, I think, as a headquarters for his business and to be a visual promotion for his business. It got sold. He went out of business or whatever, and it eventually became a residence. And it still stands off the Lincoln Highway that you can drive by and see it. I think people live in it, so I don't think it's open to the public, but you can see it from the road. So it's kind of a cool thing to see. Also, if you're looking for giant things along the road, we have a 2-story high coffee pot, which was, again...
For those of you who have a really bad habit...
Again, it was, built to promote a coffee company. I think there was a cafe or something in it. And you can see this 2-story coffee pot from the road. It's also a museum dedicated solely to the Big Mac. Now, not everything of McDonald's, no McRib, no French fries. It is just to the Big Mac. And I don't know why.
And was it built by McDonald's or
no? It was some guy who really liked the Big Mac,
and he built an homage to it.
He started collecting memorabilia. Maybe some of the toys and things. I don't know what exactly is even in there, but it's only Big Mac stuff.
Now, what do you like better, the Whopper or the Big Mac?
Neither one.
Really?
I don't like all that crap on my hamburgers. I like my hamburgers plain. But if you're going to talk about just the hamburger part, I like the Whopper better.
Yeah, I like the Whopper. I like that. That's
McDonald's.
That's still my favorite sandwich of all of the big name burgers. Nothing beats the Whopper.
And Pete doesn't like to ask for anything, other than just the way it appears. And when we were dating, he used to be like, "Can I have a Whopper plain for me?" Because that's the way I wanted it.
Yes.
And he'd say, "Well, why don't you just order a hamburger?" "Well, I have a coupon for a Whopper."
A Whopper, but take everything off so it's less of a Whopper.
Now, also, there was a farm where you can see the Equine Einsteins.
Equine Einsteins. So this has something to do with smart horses.
Exactly.
You see what I did with that?
He's a smarty pants. They breed these horses. It's a particular breed. They only grow 3 feet tall, and they're not ponies. It's not like they're baby horses. That's their full size when they are grown. And apparently they're very smart and very trainable. And you can go there and they will ask the horses math problems, and the horse will stomp out with its hoofs the answer.
Of course, with the other hoof, he's hitting a calculator. Slide rule.
Another favorite thing you might like to see is a giant quarter. In Everett, Pennsylvania, it's about 20 feet in diameter, and it weighs about a ton. And they made this giant quarter. It's a replica of our U.S. currency with George Washington's face on it and all the inscription, made true to life, but it's 20
Is Washington's face on the quarter?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's 20 feet in diameter. And it's humongous. Now, originally, somewhere along the line, I'm not sure if it was the Lincoln Highway people or another group, they had the idea that they were going to punctuate the Lincoln Highway with giant things, like the giant coffee pot, like the giant quarter. And they were going to allow you, that was going to be like a selling point and points of interest to encourage people to drive the stretches of the highway where these things were going to be. I don't know how many they actually wound up creating, but that was the concept, was going to be the giants of the Lincoln Highway.
Son of a gun. It is Washington on the quarter. For some reason, I had it in my head that it was...
You thought it should be Lincoln.
Some Pat Sajak or somebody. I don't know. But I'm just noticing on the quarter, the resolution is not very good on the quarters. They're really kind of dull looking. There's not a lot of snap to them in the engraving.
They've been used and circulated, they get kind of worn down. There's also a giant Lincoln memorial statue that they created somewhere in the Midwest end of the Lincoln Highway. It's a beautiful, big, tall, like stone, edifice, and on the top they've got the bust of Lincoln, and it's a bronze, statue of Lincoln the way we always picture him, and a plaque to honor Abe Lincoln and his, presidency and what he did for the country.
So there you have it, the story of Lincoln Highway, the book, and Lincoln Highway, the road that is really the mother road. I know a lot of people say 66 is the mother road, but really, going back to 1913, the Lincoln Highway was the mother of them all.
For those who truly want to experience America and relive what those early auto pioneers on the Lincoln Highway experienced, get off the interstate and seek out those portions of the old road. Slow down and savor the joy of auto touring. Discover the fascinating history not only of the Lincoln Highway, but of America itself. Get away from the mundane and ordinary and understand what those who pioneered the way knew, that getting there is half the fun. After 100 years on the Lincoln Highway, it's still the journey that counts.
Thank you, Wyoming PBS, for your wonderful documentary, 100 Years of the Lincoln Highway. And Bob Sauer, narrator, you are magnificent. And it's time now for our trivia quiz, because we know y'all wait for that toward the end of our podcast.
Yes.
So are you going to give me my question first? Is that how we're going to do this?
If you like,
Okay.
sure. Okay, I think you might get this one because it's RPM, and that's one of your fortes is music.
Okay.
Okay. What kind of boy did the Shirelles say was their first and last love?
I think I've got this one.
I think you might.
Yeah. How about Soldier Boy?
That's it.
There you go. There you go. You see that? All those years that I spent as a radio DJ
Finally
paid off some way. Okay, you ready for yours? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see. Nah, that's not a good one. Let me see. All right. I'll give you one from TV.
Okay.
Yeah, TV. What day was guest star day on the Mickey Mouse Club? What day was guest star day on the Mickey Mouse Club?
Got a 1 in 5 chance of getting it right. I used to watch it. I'm thinking probably in the middle of the week, maybe Tuesday.
Right, you are.
Ooh.
It was Tuesday.
All right.
I wasn't sure if you were going to get that one. or not.
I mean, I kind of knew it wasn't Monday or Friday for some reason in my head, but I just kind of pulled it out of nowhere.
Wow. So you got one and I got one.
All right.
No better way to end the show. Thank you for watching our podcast or listening to us on the many platforms where you can hear us. And by the way, Maureen and I want to thank the hundreds of you who watched our last podcast about Levittown, Pennsylvania.
Right.
43 Deep Green Lane.
It's one of our biggest watches so far.
Yeah.
Almost, we got over 300.
Yeah, pretty close to 300. And that most of our views anymore are on Facebook. And then we get a much smaller number on the actual audio podcast, where you can listen to it anywhere where you can hear a podcast. You'll find the Sonic Boomers podcast. If you're looking for the video, obviously you have found it by watching this. But it is at my Facebook page, Pete Torriello. That's where we get most of our hits, I think. You can watch it on Maureen's Facebook page, Maureen Conroy Torriello. And we also have a Facebook page dedicated just to the podcast. So look for the Sonic Boomers on Facebook.
And we also have a YouTube channel.
Right.
So there's no excuse.
And if you want to write to us, you can write to us at sonicboomers@protonmail.com, and we will be happy to hear from you. Every once in a while, a letter does pour in, and we read them all.
And we make sure we answer
And we'll
you.
make sure that we answer you. So until next time, we'll tell you, go out, read a good book, take a ride along the Lincoln Highway, but get out there and... I'm pushing all the wrong buttons. Pushing all the wrong buttons. 40 years in radio, he still can't run the freaking board. Here we go. As I was saying, read a book, take a ride down the Lincoln Highway, and get out there and make some noise.